Hey, John, if we go to this next slide, we have some news photographs of some people who have something in common. Let's talk about these pictures. Let's first of all start with the guy in the upper left-hand corner, because that picture is a little disturbing without explanation. The guy is alive, in case the legs look a little bit worrisome. But he dropped his wallet down a storm drain, and so he pulled off the storm drain, decided he was going to get his wallet, and he got stuck just like that. Fire department had to come, get him out. The guy right next to him dropped his cell phone. You can't see it very well. Dropped his cell phone down the toilet, reached his arm down the hole to get the cell phone. His arm got stuck. Fire department had to come, break away the toilet. I don't even know how you get your arm stuck in a toilet. And I'm not even sure why you would go there. But he did. So are you getting the theme here? The kid in the upper right-hand corner was playing the arcade game, The Claw. The Claw! Toy Story reference? Yeah, some of you missed it. All right. He couldn't get the toy, and so he decided, I'm just going to crawl inside. And he realized he could fit inside the chute to get a toy, and he couldn't get back out. So his parents put a quarter in it and grabbed the... No, they really didn't do that, but it would have been funny if they would have. In the lower right-hand corner, this daredevil was riding his motorcycle across this high wire. His motorcycle broke down, and he got stuck. They said in the news caption that he had to get towed off. I'm not sure what towing service you call to rescue from there. In the picture, you really can't see it, but this is a news caption about a French woman who was discovered having been stuck in an elevator for 3 days. She was in there 3 days before anybody finally realized there was somebody stuck in the elevator. And then finally, this last caption, that roller coaster is not moving. It came to a screeching halt in that position right there. So, so that would be the coaster for those of you who complain about how short roller coaster rides are. This one lasted a long, long time. All right, so this is the point. These are all people who got stuck for various reasons, and all these people have something in common with this person in the next photo. You're supposed to see you in there. It's a mirror. Screens don't reflect. Pictures of mirrors don't reflect. But you get the idea. We, like our friends in the first slide, we can get stuck in life, and we can get stuck for some of the exact same reasons. Just like the two guys who were trying to retrieve a lost wallet or a lost cell phone, we can find ourselves trying to fix something in life, something that was lost, something that was broken, and we end up getting stuck somewhere that we really never meant to be. Let me give you a couple examples. Some of you might find yourselves stuck trying to deal with some pain in your life, and some of the things you're choosing to deal with pain might be things like comfort eating, trying to deal with stress through stress eating. Some of you are trying to deal with actual physical pain through pain medication, but you found yourself in a place where you're stuck on pain medication dependency. Some of you are trying to deal with something in your life that feels out of control, and you're dealing with it by spending compulsively. Maybe you're cutting. Maybe you're a perfectionist. But in some way, you're trying to fix some sort of problem in life, and what's actually happened is you found that you got your arm down a toilet, and you're stuck in a way that you never thought you'd be stuck. Can you identify, perhaps, with that? Or maybe some of you can identify with the kid up in the right-hand corner. You're trying to get something in life that you thought would be enjoyable, something fun, some sort of toy to get your hands on, but what you really actually are finding out that you're stuck in a bad choice now. You thought that this particular relationship would be a good choice, and now you're stuck in a bad relationship. Or you're stuck in trying to, deal with life by just habitually choosing these bad knee-jerk reactions And like the kid in the arcade game, you're just stuck in this cycle of bad knee-jerk reactions, telling little white lies, for instance. And you just can't get on top of all the little lies you're stuck inside of. Some of you might be able to identify with the motorcycle rider. You've made some choices in life that you thought might be a little bit daring, but they've actually proven to be a little bit careless, a little bit reckless, and you've ended up stuck on some sort of high wire balancing act. Here's a simple thing, just bad sleep habits. You're staying up when you should be sleeping. You're sleeping when you should be up. And you're stuck just dangling in this balance, trying to hold life together. Maybe some of you might be able to identify with being stuck in those ways. Maybe like the French woman in the elevator, you're stuck in it. It's really not your fault. Something else broke down. Somebody did something to you, and you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time, trying to deal with the pain that they've caused. And now you're kind of trapped behind these doors, and nobody maybe even knows that you're trapped behind these doors. Doors like depression or anger or unforgiveness towards that person who did that thing to you. Hopelessness, fear, negativity, a critical spirit, self-deprecation. Some of you might be able to identify with being stuck in those ways. Or maybe, like the people on the roller coaster, maybe you made some sort of choice to go on a joyride in your life, and now you've found that you're stuck on that very joyride. The thing that you thought was going to be fun, it's not fun anymore. You're hanging upside down, in something like a chemical dependency, a substance dependency. You're stuck in pornography. You're just stuck. You thought it'd be fun to play Angry Birds, and now you're stuck. You're stuck. You just surf the internet just because it's something to do, and now you're stuck. You're like addicted. I got to just surf the net, and you're stuck. And you thought it'd be a joyride, but you're realizing you're really, in some sense, it's a compulsive thing. It's an addiction in your life. So I think in many ways we can all identify with the people in the first slide, that we can get stuck in a lot of different ways in life. Only what's a little bit different is, with the exception of the French woman who was stuck for 3 days, most of those people were released within a half hour to an hour of when they were stuck. But the things that we get stuck in, like pornography addiction, it doesn't get over in 30 minutes. And we can get stuck for a really long time. And so the important question we want to deal with as we begin this Life's Freeing Choices message series this morning is, how do we get unstuck in those areas that we're stuck? Well, first of all, to better help you connect with the material that we're going to be beginning this morning, I just want you to take a moment of personal reflection and just write down, maybe even in your sermon notes this morning, some areas that you feel stuck in life. Okay? So I invite you, don't just blow this off. I'm inviting you to participate right now. So I'll give you about 30 seconds or so just to consider areas of your life that you're stuck in. And you can write that down. Let's hold these things up before the Lord, just in your heart. Say, Jesus, help me with this. I want to get unstuck. And Jesus, we invite you to speak to us and to bring freedom this morning. In Jesus' name, amen. This sermon series, Life's Freeing Choices, is going to be based on one of the most famous sermons Jesus ever gave. It's called the Sermon on the Mount, and we find that in Matthew chapter 5. We're going to read the entire passage this morning, the section of the Sermon on the Mount that's commonly called the Beatitudes, and we're going to read that right now. But this morning we're going to just look at the first beatitude, the first statement in this famous sermon of Jesus. So let's read this together. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Next slide. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. And blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And so Jesus begins this famous sermon, the Sermon on the Mount, by saying, basically, I'm going to give you 8 choices that you can make that will cause your life to be blessed. You'll be blessed if you choose to do this. You'll be blessed if you choose to do that. You'll be blessed if you choose to do this other thing. And so there's 8 choices that we're going to be looking at this morning and in the next 7 weeks. Now, we need to first of all understand, what does it mean to be blessed? Blessed is one of those words that all Christians use, and it's just Christianese that almost has no meaning. It's like, oh, that was such a blessing. What does that mean? Well, in this particular verse, the original word simply means happy. And when it's used in Scripture, the Bible uses blessed to mean the supreme happiness that results in our lives when God's favor is on our lives. And so in his most famous sermon, Jesus gives us 8 choices to discover happiness, to find happiness. You will be happy if you make these 8 choices. Well, what does happiness have to do with being unstuck? Well, if you can imagine, if you walked up to your friend whose legs were sticking out of the storm drain, and you had this little conversation, "Hey, Joe, yeah, got a question for you. Yeah, how happy are you right now?" Right? What would he say? You know, the guy with his arm in the toilet. "Hey, how you doing?" "Yeah, I've been better." Right? When we're stuck, you know, we're really not happy, right? That's the truth of the matter. And so if there are areas in our lives in which we're stuck, we're really not experiencing God's supreme happiness. The supreme happiness that is ours, you know, when God's favor is on us. When we've got our arm, you know, when we're up to our armpits in some metaphorical toilet, right, in our life, we're probably not supremely happy. And so the freeing choice, this is the point, the freeing choice is the happiness choice. The happiness choice is the choice that causes us to become unstuck from the things that we're stuck in. That is the blessed choice. And that's what we're going to be looking at for these next 8 weeks. And today we begin with the first choice, which is the reality choice. The reality choice is the first choice of happiness. And we see the reality choice in Matthew 5:3, which read, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Now let me explain to you why we get the reality choice out of this verse. There are 2 parts to this verse. Poor in spirit, and 2, kingdom of heaven. Now, kingdom of heaven I've taught on before. Some of you have heard me teach. Kingdom of heaven simply means the rule of God. The kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, 2 phrases that are used interchangeably in the New Testament, simply means when God is when God is ruling, when God is getting his way. And so the poor in spirit are happy because God is getting his way. The rule of God is happening. That's the first part. The second part, poor in the spirit, means recognizing that I in and of myself am spiritually destitute. It has nothing to do with being, actually economically poor. It has everything to do with being spiritually poor. So the spiritually poor, those who recognize I'm spiritually destitute, I'm spiritually bankrupt. When it comes to helping myself spiritually, when it comes to getting myself unstuck spiritually, this verse is saying, I don't have 2 nickels to rub together. I am spiritually poor. I am helpless. That's the truth of the human condition. That's reality for your life. It's my life. And that's why we call this the reality choice. So if you put this all together, Jesus is saying to you this morning, do you want to be happy? Choose reality. And this is reality. Choosing reality means choosing to acknowledge that you're spiritually helpless, you're spiritually bankrupt, you're spiritually destitute. And when you own up to that, God rules in your life. God rules. And just to show you that I'm not making up this particular interpretation of these verses, let's look at a couple other translations of the Bible just to see what it looks like. The God's Word translation translates 5:3 as, blessed are those who recognize that they're spiritually helpless. There it is, spiritually helpless. The kingdom of heaven belongs to them. Contemporary English version says, happy are the people who are hopeless because the kingdom of heaven is theirs. And the Message translation really pulls it all together. You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope, when you realize, I am spiritually destitute. That's when I'm happy, because with less of you, there's more of God and His rule. And so when you and I get real, when we acknowledge that we're spiritually helpless, there's less of us to get in God's way and more room for God to rule. And when God rules in our lives, we get unstuck. And when we get unstuck, that's when we experience the supreme happiness of God's favor. Does that make sense? So this is the simple idea. Let's put that into one simple idea this morning that I want you to walk away with. God rules when I get real. God rules when I get real. Let's say that together. God rules when I get real. Let's say it again. God rules when I get real. Well, what do we need to get real about in order to experience the rule of God, in order to experience the freedom of God and the happiness of God in our lives? Well, the first thing that we need to get real about is the fact that we're spiritually bankrupt, what I've just been talking about. The fact that we are stuck. Now, this may seem like a no-brainer, just admitting that we're stuck in some area in our lives. I mean, you couldn't imagine, talking to the guy, Joe, our friend Joe, with his leg sticking out of the storm drain, and again, asking him, hey, Joe, how you doing? And him saying, yeah, fine, why do you ask? Right, that would be crazy, right? Talking to people on the roller coaster ride, hanging outside, how's the ride? We're loving it, couldn't be any more fun. Why are you asking? Right? It would be crazy if people stuck in those kind of hideous circumstances just denied what was going on. It would be crazy. But honestly, when it comes to areas in our lives when we're stuck and we need some help, what we do is exactly, the thing that's crazy. Hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm fine. And you've got you're up to your armpits in some metaphorical toilet in your life. I'm fine. You've been stuck on some sort of elevator, trapped behind depression or discouragement or bitterness or anger for days and days and days and days. And it may be that nobody even knows you're there because you're not even crying out for help. I mean, here's a very simple illustration. Have you ever had this conversation with somebody? Hey, I've noticed that you're angry. I'm not angry. No, really, you're coming across as kind of being angry. I'm not angry. Right? Have you had that conversation? Yeah, you have. And you've been on both sides of that conversation too. What is it about just admitting, you're right, I guess I'm angry? We can't do it. There's something weird about us that we can't admit the things that we're stuck in. Well, the good news is, I think, or maybe this is bad news, that this resistance to getting real is as old as the human race. In the Garden of Eden, in Genesis 3, records that after the very first man and the very first woman got stuck in the web of sin, they hid their broken selves behind some fig leaves. And then when God came looking for them, they put into the words the very same things that you and I still say even to this day. I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. Now, their nakedness didn't have so much to do with their physical exposure, but with the realization that as a result of disobeying God, as a result of some bad choices they were making, that they were now broken. There was something that they felt guilty about, or something they felt ashamed about in their lives. And so they're afraid of being seen in their brokenness, so they hid. And that's the exact same game that you and I play today. Rather than get real about the areas in our lives that are broken, rather than get real about the areas in our lives where we're stuck, rather than face the risk of getting unstuck, we would rather maintain the appearance that we're not stuck. Do you know that one? Because we're afraid of being seen as being broken. Hey, here's a news flash. You're broken. I'm broken. We're all broken. And here's another news flash. Most of us know it about each other. You know, your fig leaves don't work anywhere near as good as you think they do. Right? Do you know that one? But there's still something about us like, no, I can't own up. I can't show a little bit because I'm afraid of being seen as broken. And so we keep our areas of brokenness and stuckness and sickness and sinfulness hidden behind layers of fig leaves. You know, and here's a simple spiritual truth, a biblical truth about that choice of living a fig leaf kind of existence, a hiding our secrets from those around us. Here's the truth. My secrets make me sick. And they keep me stuck. My secrets make me sick and they keep me stuck. We see this in Psalm 32, 3 and 4. When I refused, this is David, King David speaking. When I refused to confess my sins, I was weak and miserable and I groaned all day long. He was hiding. When I was patching these fig leaves over my body and refusing to get real, it makes us sick, weak, and miserable. I suspect you know that one. I do. I know those times in my life when I was stuck in something. I was stuck in some sort of sin, and the longer I kept it hidden, the more guilty I felt about it, the more shame I felt about it, and the weaker I became. And the psalmist goes on to say, and my strength then evaporated like water in the summer heat. Our secrets sap our strength. They make it harder for us to get unstuck. And again, I think most of us know this from experience, that the longer we keep something hidden in the dark, the harder it is for us to resist that very thing. We get weaker and weaker and weaker to it. I can tell you stories of people I know who are stuck in secret infatuations with someone they weren't married to. And the longer they kept it a secret, the sicker they became, and the weaker they became to resisting that illegitimate relationship. It evaporated their strength. Our secrets make us sick. Our secrets keep us stuck. And so the first step in getting unstuck is to get real about the areas that we're stuck in. And then where the psalmist goes in this next sentence then takes us to the next step we need to take in order to get real. We need to get real about the fact that we're stuck and that we need help. We need help. We're not just stuck. You know, it'd be like the people on the roller coaster. Hey, are you guys stuck? Yeah. Need some help? We're good. I'm fine. You know, Joe calling from the drain pipe. You know, he calls his brother, hey, Larry, I'm stuck in the drain pipe. Well, you need some help? No, I'm good. All right, we got to take the next step. It's not enough just to admit we're stuck. We got to take the next step and admit that we need some help. That's what the psalmist does. He says, finally, I confessed my sins to you, Lord, and I stopped trying to hide them all, and you forgave me, and all my guilt is gone. And so when the psalmist got real about the sin in his life, and he stopped trying to hide them all, he got well. He got unstuck. And when he got real about his spiritual bankruptcy and his helplessness, he experienced the rule of God come into his life, and he found the forgiveness and the freedom and the supreme happiness that's his when God rules in his life. And so we see from the psalmist's example that we first of all need to get real, that we need help from God. That's what we need to get real about as our get real reality choice. I think it's an obvious truth to us that we need to get real with God. You know, I don't think any of you would be sitting here this morning if you didn't think that God some way played a part in the freedom that you're looking for in life and the happiness, right? Yeah, so I think we can all own up to that. Yeah, I need to get real with God about the areas that I'm stuck in. And we've already seen in Matthew 5:3 that when we get real with God, that's where his rule comes in. That's where his power and strength comes in to bring freedom and forgiveness and supreme happiness. But there's another spiritual truth that tells us why we need to get real with God about our helplessness in areas that we're stuck. And this is the truth. God's rule raises dead things. God's rule raises dead things. In 2 Corinthians 1:9, the Apostle Paul got real about tough times that he was facing in life. And this is what the Apostle Paul had to say. We despaired of even life itself. So the Apostle Paul, perhaps one of the greatest Christians next to Jesus, found himself in situations that were so completely hopeless that he was ready to throw in the towel. But it was that hopelessness and that stuckness he was feeling in those situations that led him to get real, because he went on to say in the next sentence, we saw how powerless we were to help ourselves. That's the get real choice. That's the poor in spirit. That's the spiritually bankrupting. I'm powerless to help ourselves. And for then, we put everything into the hands of God, who alone could save us, for even he can raise the dead. So when we get real about our own powerlessness, our helplessness, our spiritual poverty, it's then that we put things into the hands of God, into the rule of God, and into the rule of the God who does what? He raises dead things. Well, this is a reason to get real with God. He raises dead things. When we get real, with the Lord who can raise something from the dead, those things that we want to hopelessly throw in the towel on. This thing is dead. It's lifeless. There's no hope for this. I want to throw in the towel. It's like, no. Admit your powerlessness, admit it to God, and find the power that raises dead things. And so if God can raise a dead person, he can raise a dead marriage that you're feeling hopeless about right now, that you're ready to throw the towel in on. He can. If God can breathe life into a lifeless body, he can breathe life into your lifeless willpower. You understand that? If God can make a dead heart start beating again, he can make your broken heart, your crushed heart, start beating again. God's rule raises dead things, and that's why you need to get real with God and ask him for help. God rules when you get real. God rules when you get real. But the Bible tells us one more other step in getting real and making the reality choice. And that's this, that we need to get real with one another. Not just getting real with God, but getting real with one another. We need to admit that we need help not just from God, but from one another. And we see that truth in many passages in Scripture. I've only picked James 5:16 for this morning. It says, admit your faults to one another and pray for each other so that you may be healed. Healing and freedom and the happiness that come along with God's rule comes when we get real with one another and pray for one another. Now, I don't know about you, but the question that runs through my mind when I see verses like this is, does it have to be that way? Why can't I just get real with God and keep everyone else in the dark? Right? You've asked that question? Yes, you have. I have. I don't have any trouble trusting God with my faults. It's you guys I'm not so certain about. Right? You know that one. I feel safe with God. You guys? Fig leaves. Well, sure. Well, why would the Bible tell us that we need to get real with one another as the happiness choice, as the freedom choice, as the reality choice? I'm going to give you just a couple reasons just off the top of my head. There's something about confessing our secret stuff to a trusted brother, men, to a trusted sister, women, that breaks the power of that secret stuff over our lives. There's something about it, over and above confessing it to God, there's something that's about confessing it to another person that breaks the power of it over our lives. Let me tell you a personal story. This is a risk. This is a fig leaf coming off kind of thing. There was a point in time where my marriage was hard work. And there was an individual that lived in the community that I lived in at that time that I had to interact with because it was a commercial relationship, and that relationship was very easy. Hard marriage, very easy relationship. And it got in my head. It got in my head. And the longer I kept that dark, the longer I kept that under fig leaves in my head, the bigger it became. Some of you may know that one. The bigger it was becoming, the weaker I was becoming. I finally pulled a friend aside, a brother, a trusted brother, and I said, hey, I got to tell you something. And it was embarrassing. It was humiliating to admit it. But I said, hey, I've got this whole head thing going on. And I'm just telling you, the second I confessed it to this brother and prayed to the Lord with him, the power of that thing that was going on in my head was broken. Now, trust me, I've been confessing it to the Lord. Lord, I know where I'm going and my head is wrong. But it was when I confessed it to a brother and he prayed with me, the power was broken. Why does it work that way? I don't know. I just know that it does. There's something about confessing our secret stuff with a trusted brother or sister that breaks the power of secret stuff over our lives and brings us into the place of freedom and God's rule and God's happiness. Something else I'll tell you that I think that works about this. There's something about hearing a trusted brother or a trusted sister hear our confession and pronounce over us the forgiveness that is ours in Jesus Christ. You know, having somebody pray with us and say, I've heard along with the Lord your confession, and I pronounce over you the truth of 1 John 1:9. If we confess our sin, he's faithful and just to forgive us our sin and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. There's something about that makes the forgiveness more real than when it's just me and God. Because I can confess stuff to God, but in my mind I will doubt, did I really confess it? Did God really hear me? Did God really forgive me? But when another audible human being says, forgiven, it's done. You are forgiven from all sin. It sticks in a way. Well, those are just a couple reasons off the top of my head where getting real means getting real about the fact that we're stuck, getting real with God about where we're stuck, and getting real with a trusted brother, men, a trusted sister, women. Is that little footnote I'm putting on there clear why I'm saying that? Trusted brother, men, trusted sister, women. Okay. Here's the application point for you. If you don't have a Christian brother or sister that you can get real with, you're not a healthy Christian. You're not a healthy Christian. You're not living a healthy, biblical, New Testament Christian life. You need to intentionally choose and intentionally cultivate those kinds of relationships in your life. And I use the word intentionally, because a lot of you are waiting for that to happen naturally. And it might. You're waiting for it to happen organically. And it might, but it probably won't. You hear me? It probably won't. You have to intentionally choose those sorts of relationships, and you have to intentionally cultivate those sorts of relationships. And so make this a point of application. You want to find God's happiness in your life, you need to get real. You need to get real with God, and you need to find a brother or a sister that you're going to get real with as well. So we need to get real to get free. We need to get real about our habits. Our bad habits. We need to get real about the hang-ups. These are phrases we're going to be using throughout this series. We need to get real about our hurts. We need to get real with God. We need to get real with others, because God rules. God rules when we get real. So what I want to do right now is I want to introduce to you Steve Larison, who's got a story about being stuck, and a story about getting real with himself and getting real with God. Come on up, Steve. Getting real with others and finding the rule of God coming to set him free when he got real. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Pastor Ken. As you know, I'm Steve. And I'm a very grateful believer in Jesus Christ. And I've struggled with, I've been stuck in methamphetamine addiction, rejection, depression, overeating, and selfishness. I can't remember when I didn't know that Jesus died for me and loves me. I was raised in church, and I was saved at an early age, and everything's gone hunky-dory ever since. Not. I tried to be good, but I couldn't be good enough. So I got discouraged and gave up and felt rejected by God. Dad was on the church board and held an office in the Lions Club, was state treasurer of the Gideons, and also worked his way up to bank president. Mom was a school teacher. Mom and Dad were at some kind of a meeting or another every night of the week. So and my family didn't have time for me. I felt rejected by my family too. So I rebelled and acted up to get attention, but the attention I got wasn't the kind I really wanted. Well, I ended up almost not graduating from high school for two reasons. One, I was not getting very good grades. The other reason why is because I wore a chip on my shoulder. I was angry all the time and in fights quite often. Well, after graduating in the summer of 1969, I went to California and I tried, I found some LSD and I tried it and I loved it. And so I proceeded in trying all the other ones. And I ended up in New Orleans where I tried methamphetamine for the first time. And I was hooked immediately. I felt like I was Superman. Who doesn't want to feel like Superman? I got busted for selling drugs to support my habit. I moved back home, and shortly after I recommitted my life to Christ, and I went to church and AA for 10 years during the 70s. I was reasonably happy. In fact, I was pretty happy. Then problems arose at church. It shook me up pretty bad, and I ended up leaving church and getting back on drugs. I had also gotten married and had 6 kids in those 10 years, and soon was divorced and lost them. I went for years partying as hard as I could, and thought I could get away with it, and thinking only that I was hurting myself and not wanting to realize the effects that I was having on my kids and later on my grandkids. Well, then I met my wife Pam, and it wasn't long after that, while we were both kicking a cocaine habit, that we got together and got married, started going to church and got married. I should put it in that order. And she must really love me because she stuck through all this. Anyway, things were going pretty good, and a tornado came through our trailer park and destroyed most of the homes there. Ours was one of 2 that wasn't harmed in any way. And instead of being grateful for that and the fact that no one was killed, I became angry with God. And it took less than a month in this state of mind to get high and forget it all the time again. By this time, meth was pretty popular and pretty easy to get. So I became really hooked, and after a while, I could tell it was making me stupid and taking me down. So I tried to quit. The longest I could go was a month at a time. And I get so sick and tired of being sick and tired. and depressed that I'd go get some and I'd be okay on the surface for 3 or 4 days. I'd get some things done. Well, while I was going through this, I got a puppy. And my puppy caught parvo. And parvo usually kills dogs, especially big black dogs, and that's what kind he was. So I pretty much kissed him goodbye. And God spoke to me. He said, you know, I'm going to heal your dog for you. And my thoughts automatically were, why would you want to do anything for me? I'm not living right. I can't even get off meth. God heard my thoughts. He said, not because you're living right or for any other reason, but because I love you so much. And then God waited until I knew for sure that it was him that healed Axel, my puppy. I had been cleaning up his messes and stuff, and I've lived on a farm. He had maybe 2 or 3 hours to live. He for sure wasn't going to make it through the night. Then all of a sudden he just jumped up and walked around and acted like nothing happened. This really shook me and really took a hold of me to know that God loved me even when I wasn't living right, even when I wasn't following him the way that I knew I should. Well, I stumbled around the rest of that summer. And in that fall, my brother asked me to go to North Dakota with him to go pheasant hunting and visit my sister Bonnie that lives out there. Well, on October 8th, 2009, I left on that hunting trip, and I've not used any drugs since then. And while I was out there, I went to church with them, and I got reconnected with God. Well, when I got back, my daughter Beth asked me to go to a Celebrate Recovery meeting with her. And I'm so glad I went along for that ride. Have you ever walked into a place where you felt the hate, like a prison? Well, when I walked into that Celebrate Recovery meeting, I felt the love. It was so strong and warm, and everybody cared. Yet nobody cared. Nobody cared where I'd been. Nobody cared what I had done. They were just glad to see me. They were glad I was there. There was a group of people whom I felt safe with and could unload without worrying about being judged for my past, because I was such a loser. And this was important. Plus, I expressed my concerns with God. Since I was such a loser, since I had tried to follow him so many times and fallen away, why should I try? It would just give him shame and dishonor when I messed up again. I was afraid of failure. God gave me 2 scriptures. 1 John 4:18, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. And as Isaiah 41:10, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not anxiously look about you, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Surely I will help you. Surely I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. God loves me so much that he will uphold me with his righteous right hand. And I found out that depression equals no hope. If you don't have any hope, look out, depression's coming. I have hope now. I have a real hope now. Thank you all for listening.
Good job, Steve. There's a real life story of someone who got stuck, someone who got real with God, got real with others in relationships and Celebrate Recovery, and found hope and freedom from the things that he'd been stuck in. Get real. Let's get real. Let's get real with God. Let's get real with ourselves. That's the first step, admitting I'm stuck and getting real with one another. Let's stand. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Happy are you when God rules, and God rules when I get real. Let's say that again. God rules when I get real.